the meeting, please proceed back towards reception, leave the building and congregate outside the Great Hall. Toilet facilities are available on this floor, just outside of this room, around the near entrance. Please, if I could ask you to switch off or put onto silent your mobile phones if you haven't already. And a reminder that filming, recording and broadcasting, that the press and members of the public are permitted to film, record and broadcast this public session of the meeting. By entering and remaining at the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and recorded, and to the possible use of those images and recordings for broadcasting purposes. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room whilst the meeting is taking place, so must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted elsewhere in the building at any time. So if I may move to the first item, which is apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Lucioni from the Isle of Wight, Councillor Oliver from the Hart District Council and Councillor Allen from Southampton City Council. Do we have any other apologies? No, thank you very much. Then on to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations to make? No, thank you very much. Questions and deputations. There were no public questions or deputation requests received for today's meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is a meeting held in public, but not a public meeting. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to observe the meeting, but are not able to ask questions without previous arrangements. Item 4 is the Chair's announcements, and I fundamentally just have a very simple, which is always tricky with some of the legislation that we have for confirmation hearings, just to thank everybody for making themselves available at such a short period of notice, so that's greatly appreciated. I'm sure for Katie it can sometimes be a bit of a worry to make sure that we're core in such a short space of time, but that's all the things that I need to say for today. Then moving on to item 5, which is the confirmation hearing for the appointment to the role of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. You will see in the report pack at item 5, it sets out the process to be followed today. The pack includes information such as the criteria used to assess the suitability of the candidate and why they satisfy those criteria, terms and conditions on which the candidate is to be appointed, and an independent panel member report. The panel will ask questions of the candidate which relate to their professional competence and personal independence, the answers to which will enable members to evaluate their suitability for the role. The lines of inquiry that we will follow today have been agreed by the panel and have not been provided to the candidate. Supplementary questions may be used to clarify an answer. I invite the Commissioner first to give a short overview of the process, followed to select a preferred candidate and her reasons for recommending this appointment to the role. So, Donna, over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to echo your comments, Chair, and thank the panel for coming together at short notice to consider my request to you today to endorse Alex Rennie as the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So in the process of selecting a deputy, first of all, there was the question of whether or not to have a deputy again or not, and particularly with the uncertainty that has led up to today of my role and the future going forward. There is now some more clarity around that I've had from the government. I'm happy to embellish on that if you want me to in due course. And that has actually played a part in my decision to bring forward the recommendation to you today. Secondly, then, once I'd moved on from the concept of having a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, it was then around the who, and of course that is very important, around the competencies, the experience that person has, and of course it is the sole political appointment that you have as a Police and Crime Commissioner. Everybody else who works in my office, as you will know, is politically restricted. They are politically neutral appointments, including the Chief Executive. And so looking at the needs I had in terms of this being two very large geographical counties of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, 2.2 million people, and then looking at the skill set that I thought would complement me. So what kind of deputy did I need? Someone who understands SIPFA rules, somebody who has worked in and around public sector organisations for a number of years, which Alex has done. Having been a council leader, Alex has already been accountable for multi-million-pound public sector budgets and the delivery of them, understands the Nolan principles, understands the complaints procedures, understands how Parliament works, understands the importance of relationships with key stakeholders such as health partners, fire, clearly local authorities for us in the police. Yes, the policing part is going to be a learning curve, as it was for me when I took on this role, and in fact probably for most people who become police and crime commissioners, unless you are indeed an ex-police officer. In conclusion, Chair, I feel that Alex has a almost perfect CV for me, save if he'd been a police officer, as I say, but then he wouldn't have other attributes. So for me, having a deputy who I think on his personal strengths and competencies in comparison to mine, I think Alex is a very analytical person, which perhaps is maybe more of a weakness for me. So that also complements me really well. And I know he's got the experience of being a voice for the public, of attending public meetings and of doing casework and of being able to have that filter that I would need him to have to make judgments on my behalf when I'm not around. So in essence, his background in the public sector, having been a council leader, having worked in and around Parliament for a number of years, and particularly the strength that he will bring to the team in that public sector finance role of understanding those SIPFA rules is why today, Chair, I make a recommendation to the panel to endorse Alex Rennie as the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Donna. We've got some questions that we will all go through. So first of all, I believe, Gwen, you'd like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. And it may well be, Donna, that you've covered some of this. Given that a formal recruitment process is not required for the DPCC appointment, how can you assure the panel that you have taken a fair and transparent approach in proposing this appointment?
Thank you very much, Gwen. Good question. I have consulted with colleagues across the area. I did a little bit of research on Alex first to see if, what people from different political parties felt about Alex, if they'd worked with him in the past. And I've had some ringing endorsements, particularly from Labour in and around the Havant borough boundary, who have enjoyed a positive working relationship with Alex over a number of years. Within my own political party, and then actually just having a look at things like his social media, the reach that he had in his ward, how well he connected with the public, and there were, a couple of other people who I had conversations with, but actually I felt that Alex was the best fit all round for what not just me, it's also what the team need as well.
Brilliant, thank you very much. A question from me, Donna, if I may, is I wonder if you could explain how the salary level for the deputy role is determined.
Thank you. Yes, so the salary of the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner is capped at 75% of the PCC salary. You don't have to go up to that level, it's up to that amount. All of the deputies in the country that I'm aware are paid at the 75% with the exception of one, and I think that's because it's a part-time role.
And just as a quick supplementary for me, I'm conscious I can't remember how many years ago, but it was probably, let's call it a couple of Home Secretaries ago. There was I think a Home Secretary was talking about being a requirement to have a deputy. Did that come into effect, or what's the position with some of your colleagues elsewhere?
Yes, that was 4 Home Secretaries ago. That was Priti Patel, who there was a piece of work done in March 2020. It was published, and then another piece in March 2021, which was a reform piece of work the Home Office led on police and crime commissioners and how they work. And there was a concern at that point that with being a single public office holder as opposed to a council leader who can then appoint an executive to help with that executive responsibility, should anything happen to the one person, there are things written in the legislation which actually even the chief executive wouldn't then be able to do, such as appointing a chief constable. And so you would then have the period of a by-election if that person was indisposed before you would, 6-8 weeks potentially before you would be able to do certain key things, which could cause problems. It would cause problems in operational policing terms on the impact on the police force. And so when the original legislation was written back in 2011 and became enacted in 2012, there were some loopholes that at that point, like all legislation, you need to tweak it and amend it. And that really hadn't been done. So one of the things was a recommendation to mandate that police and crime commissioners must have a deputy PCC. And at that point, when we were elected in 21, the new crop, that is what we were very much encouraged to do. Actually, like all good bits of legislation and tweaks through government departments, 90% of it never gets enacted, and that's exactly what happened. So technically, it's not a requirement now, but largely across the country by 2029, it will be superseded, as we know, by the English Devolution Bill anyway, which does require you to have a deputy mayor that would cover police, crime and fire for a mayor if you have the policing powers.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Shirley, I believe you have a question.
Afternoon, Donna. First of all, thanks for telling us, before we asked you, why you've chosen to appoint the DPCC. I'm always conscious it is a deputy and not an assistant. So given that, two parts of the question. What's the proposed length of time that you see for the appointment? And secondly, given that you will be hitting the mayoral elections with quite some vigour, one would anticipate, that will take place in 2026, what sort of impact will this have on the duties that you will be delegating to your deputy, not your assistant?
Thank you very much, Shirley. So the question around the timescales, was that a question around how long will Alex be in post for? Yes, sorry, thank you. Originally, the reason I had decided not to appoint a new deputy was because I didn't think there was a lot of point for 7 or 8 months up until May of 2026, when I thought the role was going, when we were put on the devolution priority programme for that phase, that go early phase for 2026. But then about 7-8 weeks ago, Jim McMahon, the devolution minister, met with police and crime commissioners, particularly those in the 5 areas that are affected by devolution for next year, which is Hampshire, Sussex, Essex, Norfolk and Suffolk, which will merge together to be one morality rather than there are currently 2 PCCs there at the moment. And so those 4 new moralities will then take on the police and crime power roles, as you know, and the governance of fire. So I thought that was happening simultaneously from May of next year, and it's not. So what has now been explained to us is that I will stay in post legally until the 1st of April 2027 as Police and Crime Commissioner, unless, because I am also a candidate for the mayoral elections next year, unless I am successful. And if I am successful in May next year, then they would encourage, the Home Office would be encouraging those new mayors who are also police and crime commissioners that have 2 public offices to request of the Home Secretary that the first public office of Police and Crime Commissioner is dissolved and then wound up into the Mayor's office with immediate effect. And they have advised us that that would take about 8 weeks on a statutory instrument to be voted through Parliament to dissolve the first public office. However, if next year I stand for election and I'm not successful, then they are saying that I would stay in post until the 1st of April 2027 to then do the handover with the mayor who would take on the powers from the 1st of April 27. And that's mostly for the staff who will need to cheapie into the mayor's office, for Kate to make sure that everything is aligned from an HR perspective, policies, change of venue perhaps for the office, who knows, depending on where the mayor wants his or her team to be based. And so it's all of that logistical stuff behind the scenes for the staff mostly. That's the reason, contracts, money, those sorts of things that are in train. So my point with a deputy now is it's now 18 months and not just 7 or 8 months, and therefore the longevity gives it, that was your point number 1. Your point number 2, around my role getting geared up for the election next year, yes, it's going to be a really busy 8 months for me, as you have anticipated in your question, and therefore, ensuring that I have got, as you say, not an assistant, but a deputy who will be able to be me when I'm not there is going to be really, really key. And I do feel in Alex, I've got somebody who I can train up and work that will be able to take decisions, key decisions that I need him to be able to make if I am otherwise not there. But I do anticipate carrying on my day job as normal up until the election, and then probably not having any weekends between now and May next year, perhaps because of campaigning.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, so let's formally invite and welcome Alex to the panel. What we'll do now, Alex, is we'll have the opportunity to ask some questions of you as the candidate. On the closing of the questions, you'll be given the opportunity to clarify any answers given during the session and ask questions of the panel about the next stages of the process. So that's happy for you to do that. So first of all, Alex, I wonder if I could ask you to introduce yourself to us.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, so I'm Alex Rennie, and until May of last year, I was the leader of Havant Borough Council. I served as a councillor on Havant for 6 years, and I was leader for 3 years. Before that, I've worked in Parliament, so I worked for the Member Parliament for Havant, and more recently, after the election, I've worked in Westminster advising the Shadow Economic Secretary of Treasury, Mark Garnier, and before I got into politics, I was a journalist, so I worked for the Salisbury Journal and also covered publications, some publications sort of in West Hampshire. So I worked in the Forest Journal and a bit of stuff, the Andover Advertiser and Basingstoke Gazette. So yeah, so I've sort of that's my sort of history as to where I'm up to. So Donna and me had a conversation over the summer, and she was looking potentially for a new Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and I am someone who's always relished public service. I've always loved the element of it, and whilst I've been enjoying my time working in Westminster and advising in a capacity in Westminster, I think for me, the opportunity to come back and serve the residents of Hampshire was something that was too much of an opportunity to me to pass up. And I, having been leader of the council and worked closely with the police, worked closely with our neighbourhood team and our inspector, seeing the work the police has done, and also actually some of the challenges faced particularly in the community I served in. So Wesley, which was my ward in Havant, one of the most deprived wards in the country, and seeing the impact of crime, of gangs, and actually some of the impacts around particularly of drug use. That actually made me particularly wanting more passionate to be able to come and feel like I can make a difference in some of those elements in those areas. So I'm very passionate person. I really believe in serving the community, and I love the county that I've grown up and I live in, and the opportunity to come back here and I go out away from Westminster and come back here and serve in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight is something that is hopefully going to be something I'm really excited and looking forward to do. Thank you, Chairman.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. And I'm going to start with the first question, which is, how do you visualise you in this role as far as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, and how do you think we should measure your success if you're appointed?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, so I think I visualise my main role as being sort of Donna's eyes, ears and mouth, if that makes sense. So I know Donna is extremely active. She loves to go out and around the county, being seen and heard in places. For the amount of parish council meetings I know she attends, it's a very busy schedule, and actually it actually would be impossible for her to get all around the council, the county, should I say. And actually, I think one of the great benefits of the role of Police and Crime Commissioner, when done right, is that visible element of policing. Being able to be seeing and talking to their elected police representative and going and dealing with those problems. So I think one of my most important roles will be, on behalf of Donna, being able to go out and about around Hampshire, talk to residents, understand their key concerns, where their issues are, whether that be from antisocial behaviour to shoplifting, to concerns around road safety. I can be those eyes and those ears and report back, and also be a voice back with Donna to hold the Chief Constable to account to Donna's police and crime plan. So I really see that as being the case. Obviously, I expect to work hand in glove with Donna. So, and obviously, one of your roles here is to hold us both to, Donna and both me, us to account. So clearly, you'll be coming back and asking us questions as to whether or not we're delivering on our police and crime plan. But obviously, with Donna itself, I'm sure she'll be making sure keeping my feet to the fire and making sure that I'm doing the job and representing her best I can be.
Brilliant, thank you very much. With that in mind, you've touched on the police and crime plan. I wonder if I could ask a supplementary, which is, in being the voice of Donna when she's not around, I wonder what your thoughts are about what within her police and crime plan she's the most passionate about.
I think having heard her say opening new police stations so many times, I think it's probably that. I really know about what I know what Donna is. She really believes in making the police force visible. I think she really believes that in order to make policing, people have confidence in policing, it's about making sure the police are being seen and also treating all crimes equally. So, you know, whether or not you're a business that's experienced shoplifting, whether you're somebody that had, you might have had graffiti sprayed in your house or whatever it might be, whatever you call that police up for, you feel like you've got a valued and worthwhile service. And actually, I know that she really believes in opening up police stations, getting back to doing bobbies on the beat, getting people and police officers seen and delivering for the county. So, and I'm really behind her on that, and I think we're exactly the same beliefs when it comes to how the police service should be delivered.
Brilliant, thank you very much. If I may go to Gwen.
Hi, Alex. Do you intend to continue in your role as a senior advisor to the Shadow Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, if appointed as the DPCC? And if yes, can you foresee any conflicts of interest between the two roles?
I think the easy one, Councillor Robinson, which is I intend to do this role full time. It will be my only and sole role. The one tiny caveat might be that the pension bill, which I've been working quite heavily and extensively on over the summer, is winding its way through Parliament. So I'm probably going to carry on offering a little bit of informal advice to the opposition over the pension schemes bill, which will be winding up in the next month or so, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. But my main priority is to Donna and her role as Police Commissioner.
Brilliant, thank you. Tanya.
Hi, Alex. I'll ask this as two parts because it might be a bit long. Can you describe what the DPCC portfolio consists of and what are your key objectives for the next 6 months if appointed?
So as far as I understand the portfolio, it's around working particularly on areas such as the community safety partnerships, working with stakeholders, working particularly on the budget, helping sort of tackle some of those issues. Clearly, me and Donna have a conversation around what the new portfolio is going to look like that hopefully will sit with my strengths as being previously a council leader and working in Parliament. But I'm hoping to take some of the national work, so working with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, looking at some of that work, and also before some of the things I've seen and worked on as a councillor. So around some of those issues around the county lines issues, around drugs coming to the county, which is particularly of interest to me. But yeah, so I foresee we're going to work hopefully collaboratively to build a portfolio that really fits to my strengths.
Actually got any priorities as yet? Not until that goes.
Not as we're hoping to build that portfolio together. So yeah.
Okay. And what do you identify as the key areas of focus for the DPCC and support the PCC in delivering her priorities and objectives?
I think for me, it's delivering on that police and crime plan, and also working towards the budget. So for me, it's around ensuring we're getting those police stations open, we're recruiting more police officers, safer streets, and those are foresee as some of those key priorities. Making sure that things like the casework's being dealt with efficiently, hitting those targets, making sure that we get the things like the 999 calls, the 101s, and hold those metrics. So as they come in, I can be supporting the Police and Crime Commissioner, making sure we're holding the Chief Constable to account, holding the force to account, making sure those real front-facing services are being delivered.
Luigi.
Thank you very much, Chair. Alex, thanks so much for answering everything so candidly. One question I've got for you: your predecessor Terry was very much into, he was a school teacher. So you related very much with the youth and so on and so forth. She had a specific, let's call it expertise and passion about that area there. Forgetting your accounting things and your leadership role as a sort of council leader, what do you think you will bring to the party?
So I think one of the things I can really bring to the table is probably my understanding of how the partnership element works. So having worked across, in that partnership piece across the county for such a long time, I think I can help bridge those gaps between the council leaders, the NHS, the fire service, and actually that partnership building piece is something that I'm extensively worked across the patch, and I think I can really bring that to the table as to a specific element. I haven't got something like Terry in terms of young people, but I had worked when I was council leader quite closely, for instance, with Park School in Havant, which is an extremely good school helping young people in difficult circumstances. I do share a lot of those passions as well, and I'm willing to pick up sort of all of those pieces where I can. I think I've got a wide skill set, isn't just necessarily focused onto one area, but I think I've got the ability to probably drop into whatever the commissioner feels like I can add value.
Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, Alex. What experience have you got working in community safety or criminal justice? Because obviously it is a police and crime commissioner role as a deputy. Thank you.
In terms of criminal justice, I guess actually probably my closest element to it was actually when I started my career as a court reporter. Actually, funny enough, as I came into the building here, I was saying to Donna, actually, it's been a while since I've got parked in this car park. I used to come to the court here, but don't worry, I'm not because I'm disqualified, because I used to cover court. So I found that really fascinating, understanding how sentencing worked, how the court systems worked, how people were going through the system. So we used to cover people that would go to court multiple times. I used to cover magistrates' court on a regular basis, and understanding the element of how people were going through the system, getting trapped in the system, and actually how criminal justice was being dispensed. So I have got a sort of understanding of that knowledge of how the court system works, probably in that time of being in that side of things. The community sort of safety partnership element, I think, when I was in Havant, worked very, very closely with the council with the local inspector, then neighbourhood teams as part of doing that. And Havant had a really brilliant community safety partnership. I always enjoyed working with the local police force, really enjoyed identifying the challenges that were brought up and trying to work collaboratively to find solutions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Gwen.
Hi, Alex. Can I just push you on one bit? When we talk about, identifying key areas of focus for you to support, Donna. So my question to you is, in a sense of one of the things that's really top of the agenda, in my opinion, is shoplifting at the moment. It's a scourge. So how would you imagine that you would assist the Police and Crime Commissioner in that?
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Yeah, I think talking to Donna, I think one of the challenges that faced by the police force is that how it categorises offences, and the feeling that people get that if it's not a high impact crime, then it's not going to be treated with the same level of seriousness. And I know from talking to Donna, that's exactly how she wants to get the perception away from being. That we cannot simply say, well, because of shoplifting, we're not going to pay as much attention. We haven't got the time or the energy, because actually, those are the things that people see and feel in their communities. And actually, when you look to how things spiral in terms of, when you look at when you get issues of public disorder and you get the challenges around that, often it sparks and starts from the feeling that we're not being heard and understood, and because of the fact that you're not listening, you're not paying attention to sort of these crimes like shoplifting. So I think I personally, and I know talking to Donna, that actually, we are really keen on trying to make sure that we get out there, we solve these cases, and we bring people to justice.
Thank you very much. I wonder if I could go to Shirley now.
Thank you. Hello, Alex. I'm one of the 2 independent members, but the only one here today. I've read through your CV, and there is an enviable track record for a young man in research, policy, advisory, and senior strategic positions. Very impressive. However, there must be some weaknesses. What do you perceive your weaknesses to be in taking up this role?
Thank you. Very kind of you. It's always challenging to answer a question about weaknesses. I think I'll just reflect a little bit, I guess, on how I work, and I think I can be very deadline orientated, and I think possibly came back from how I started my career as a journalist. And I'm probably one of my big challenges if I've got a deadline coming down the road, I perhaps don't push myself to work in planning myself well to get into a deadline and doing things on time and stacking things up. And I'll often end up working extremely hard towards the end to try to make sure everything happens. And it always tends to do so. But I think, from my weakness, I've tried to learn as I've built my career up, is actually making sure that I plan myself well in advance and I manage to get milestones done and I'm more organised, because sometimes a lack of organisation can unravel me slightly. But on the whole, I try to manage that, and actually, I think sometimes the deadlines actually do push me a little bit as well. So, sorry, it's not a particularly great answer, but sometimes just thinking on the spot, trying to think of something. So there's one thing for you, Shirley. Thank you.
Okay, let me just budge you a bit further on that. It's very admirable that you want to replicate Donna and getting out there and seeing the people, because if she does anything fabulous, goodness me, it's that. So you have big shoes to follow. However, if you were on my doorstep, I would see a career politician and not someone who's ever had a real job and been out there in the community, never worked in a bank, never worked in a shop, never run my own business. And forgive me, it's not me being critical, this is real life. And people will turn around and say, for me, that would be a weakness. And I think you would have to decide how you would countermand that and prove them wrong.
It's a very fair question, and I think when you work in politics, that sometimes is the accusation you can get, and actually I think possibly because there's an element that people want to see people who have had as they say, like a job as a nurse or a doctor or whatever it might be. I guess my one thing I would say in return to that is that I have had a fair amount of life experience as well as just being involved in politics, and I'll reflect on the fact that I founded a very mid-sized sort of charity non-profit organisation that delivered humanitarian aid to Ukraine and delivered tons of humanitarian aid to Ukraine, lobbied in Westminster for the political side of things, but actually it started off as simply a group of people taking out humanitarian aid, and that involves working out export licenses, it involves sifting through huge amounts of aid, deploying where vans go, working out how crossings can happen, supporting drivers. So that's just one example of actually, that's something that was unpaid. I did it, but actually founded it, and it grew to being, and it still exists today, sort of a large group of volunteers that actually delivered, I don't know how many tons of aid we delivered over the time, but a huge amount of aid to Ukraine, and being there and seeing that's a very real experience. But actually that's much more than just politics. That was simply a group of people that came together because they believed in the humanitarian cause and they wanted to make a difference.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So, Alex, you're here in front of the Police and Crime panel. I wonder if you could talk us through what you understand the relationship of accountability to be between the PCC, the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime panel.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah. So as far as I understand it, the Police and Crime Commissioner is there to hold the Chief Constable to account and is there to ensure that the budget's been delivered. The police officer accepts the budget, the Chief Constable goes away, delivers the strategy and the plan that's set out. And you here at the Police and Crime panel, you're here to hold the Police and Crime Commissioner's Police and Crime plan to account, to making sure that she is delivering what she set out to the people when she set her plan.
And what do you think the relationship should be between the Deputy and the panel?
I would hope it would be a constructive one. And actually, one thing that councillors bring to the table very well is they're very good at scrutiny. They're very good at looking through papers and documents and statistics and being a critical friend. Not being here to necessarily cause us problems, but being here to say you might have missed this or missed that, and actually highlighting that with scrutiny, and hopefully that critical friend element is something that makes the Police and Crime Commissioner better at what she does.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Now to Christine.
Thank you. How would you intend to build effective relationships with stakeholders, including the community safety partnership teams?
Thank you. Good question. So the stakeholder front, clearly I've got a really good stakeholder base across Hampshire in terms of the political leadership. I know a lot of the MPs, I know quite a lot of the council leaders and quite a few of the councillors as well. So I'm starting from a really good spot with that. And I've got experience of my own community safety partnership. I was a cabinet lead when I started off. Before I was leader of the council, I had community as part of my portfolio. So I kind of have worked in that environment. What I would like to do is clearly I want to try to build a relationship with the community safety partnerships across the county. I know my own quite well, but actually understanding the challenges that face across the county and building up that knowledge. So I think I've started in a strong position of stakeholders, but on the community safety partnership, I think it's a case of me going out there and building those relationships up.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Shirley.
On again. Okay. Alex, can you provide an example of where you've previously improved the delivery of public services and secured improved outcomes for local people? And by that, I don't mean, scored some KPIs or managed the budget pretty well. What were the feel-good factors? How did success feel like? How did you know you'd made a difference? You walk down the road, you look around you and think, I did that. Can you give us some examples of that?
I'm going to pick on Councillor Robinson, she's sitting behind you. So when I first became leader of Hampshire Borough Council, me and Councillor Robinson had a conversation where we were both really frustrated about the quality of the play parks in the borough. They hadn't been refurbished for far too long. A number of them were falling into disrepair. And we were always told as councillors, there's no money for sewage, you have to go raise the money yourself, it can't be done, blah, 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 the usual kind of stuff you might find and challenges you might find in the council. So we went away, we sort of scratched our heads as how can we sort of think outside the box on this front. And actually what we did was we rewrote our SIL policy, so Community Infrastructure Levy policy on the council, and essentially, we used that to prioritise the building of 3 play parks a year. And that actually is now in full swing. We've built, Councillor Robinson will know exactly how many we've done now, but I want to say 12. And actually, we've got a plan now to refurbish every single play park in the borough of Havant. And that's something I'm really proud about. When I go down the road to the Emsworth Rec, sort of about a kilometre from my house, I'm running down there and I can see a brand new play park that we have helped deliver that was in real desperate need to. It's something we're really proud about, and it's a real tangible feeling that actually sometimes public service and being a councillor is actually you feel you've achieved something that wasn't or wouldn't have been there unless you'd had that ability to challenge the officers, come up with ideas and deliver something.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm looking for, see if there's any volunteers. Gwen, go on.
So, Alex, how would you look to utilise your knowledge and contacts across central and local government, as well as Parliament, for the benefit of this position? And I think you may have touched on that slightly already.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned sort of the element of knowing sort of the local political leadership here in Hampshire. I think what I have got as well is that I've got a very good knowledge of how Parliament itself works. So how to raise questions, how to raise concerns in Westminster, and I can certainly do that as well. I mean, I've got one of the benefits actually of the work I did with Ukraine was it was very cross-party. So in the end, I think I helped organise trips for about 25 members of Parliament to go out to Ukraine, and actually that was quite a few Labour MPs, Liberal Democrat MPs. So I have got kind of a really good cross-party knowledge and basis where I can, if needed, pick the phone up and ask them to ask those questions. And I've always worked really well on that cross-party basis. So yeah, it's a real strong, I think a strong suit of mine. But I think clearly, for me, it's I think probably the most beneficial is that sort of knowledge of the community stakeholders here in Hampshire, which I really hope that can give me a head start in getting going.
Brilliant, thank you, Tonya.
How would you look to support the PCC and her office to prepare for the evolving landscape of devolution and remain proactive and resilient during the changes ahead?
It's a really good question. So devolution, as we know, it will wind its way through, and clearly we don't know what will happen in May, and I think my commitment to Donna was that I would be there to support her as long as she needed me and up until the end of her term of office as Police and Crime Commissioner. I think one thing from my own experience of being council leader actually is that change itself can be very difficult for staff members. And when I first became leader, we had a shared service partnership with East Hampshire District Council. So we shared a lot of our staff members. We ended that shared arrangement about 6 months after I became leader of the council. And a lot of staff rightly became very worried about, what that meant for their role. Is it going to be there in future? What's happening? And we had to really proactively manage that communications piece, be really upfront and open with people, what's going to happen, what their role will look like. And I think for me, one element perhaps I can bring to the table is some of that sort of lived experience of going through a really big public sector organisational change and what that really means for the staff members and trying to bring those staff members on a journey with us, because clearly, with the Office of Police Crime Commissioner becoming the office for the mayor, that will inevitably lead to a lot of worry and concern for staff, what that means for their jobs, and hopefully some of that experience I went through with having an East Hampshire District Council will be beneficial.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Leslie. I'm hoping she's not going to ask you which option of LGR you prefer, Leslie.
I'll do whatever you want me to do, Mr. Pound. So in undertaking this role, how are you going to show support for the Police and Crime Commissioner in achieving value for taxpayers' money? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. That's a very, very good question. I think one thing that I think people want to, it's back to the visibility point, I think, really, which is people, whilst perhaps there's always been a certain perhaps apathy towards the role of Police and Crime Commissioner from the public, I think the more they can go out and see their elected official and deputy go out and be seen and be heard is a way of making sure they're feeling that they're getting value for money out of the office of Police and Crime Commissioner. So I think in terms of that value of taxpayer money, I think really it's being able to be out and about and making sure that people can talk to us, their casework is delivered on time, they're getting responses, but also making sure we're out and about around the county and being seen and being visible.
Thank you very much. Alex, now we're just going to, one of the things we're tasked to do is to just look at personal independence. So we're going to sort of go through a series of questions that just focus on that, and I'm going to go to Luigi first.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. Alex, from what you're saying, you're going to stop all your political consultancy work, right? Like, I mean, are there any skeletons in the cupboard that we should be aware of? And I don't mean in a pejorative sense, and I know I knew it was going to come out badly, but anyway. But one of the problems is that politics is the art of the grey areas, is the art of the possible. And quite often you make a decision based on, you know, best endeavours at the time. Are there any issues that trouble you, or are you so analytical and concise that... That's my question.
Thanks. Yeah, I sort of answered the question on work earlier, and you sort of answered your own question there. So that's yeah. So exactly. So are we stepping away from all of that? I mean, I sort of stepped away from consultancy work when I took on full time in Mark. Really, I had a period between the election and sort of going full time Mark, where I did some consultancy work, but it was all for sort of a few local companies. I mean, and nothing that's going to cause any issues or concerns for Donna or anyone else, I hope, or for you guys.
Thank you very much. Christine.
Thank you. Please, can you articulate your understanding of equality and diversity and the public sector equality duty in the context of the role of the DPCC? Thank you.
In a sense of, I totally am behind the idea that, you know, everyone has a right to an equal opportunity. I think it's absolutely vital in public sector, but also life, that, you know, people aren't held back for any reason. So I fully will uphold it, and yeah.
Thank you very much, Tonya.
It's the look that the chair keeps giving me. It's really putting me off answering questions or asking them. How can you assure the panel that you'll lead by example in promoting and supporting the principles of the Code of Conduct?
I think my time as being a councillor has always shown that I've strived to lead by example. I think my officers at the council always felt that I was fair, I was independent, I upheld the Nolan principles, and I treated everyone with respect. And I think, you know, that's exactly the same way I would treat being Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner, is really, and obviously, you know, Donna has her Code of Conduct, but obviously fundamentals of that is the Nolan principles, and I've always been fully signed up and behind that and how I deal with my public life.
Thank you very much, Shirley.
And I have the last two questions, so you can breathe freely. This is a long one. Both you and the Commissioner have represented the public from similar political and geographical backgrounds. So my question is, how would you ensure that you act on behalf and represent all of the different variable communities across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight?
Yeah, so I think the people in Havant might be slightly upset to know that they're sort of similar backgrounds, even in Portsmouth. But that aside, look, I grew up in Rowlands Castle, very obviously more as a rural. It's a village, as you know, on the outskirts of Havant. My first job was covering the beet patch, sort of around Middle Wallop and Shipton Bellinger on the Wiltshire-Hampshire borders, Fording Bridge in the Forest Journal. So I spent a few years kind of on the peripheries, or the western peripheries, working. You know, grew up in a village environment. So I like to think I have a broad perspective of Hampshire, and clearly, you know, from my point of view, it's, you know, sometimes when you have a perception that people will think, oh, well, both the Police Crime Commissioner and Deputy Police Crime Commissioner, both from South East Hampshire, you know, you've always got to work harder to sort of break away from that perception. So I think, you know, in some ways that probably means we have to be seen more in places like Basingstoke and Andover and the New Forest, etc. So, you know, we'll really work, and I know Donna is always around the county, but, you know, I will strive to be as much as her as well around the county and being seen and making sure we're not looking like we're in our ivory tower in Fareham.
And the last one from me. So in the political career you've outlined to us when you've been leader, you've always been able to represent your own views, your own political feelings and views, and push those. I would put it to you that being the deputy for Donna, there could be occasions when you're on a national stage and you could be presenting views that could conflict with your own views in order to meet the national agenda or even Donna's agenda that you may or may not share. How would you tackle that? How would you feel about that?
I've always been very comfortable as somebody who represents politicians. I mean, I've been doing it for quite a long time. My current role is representing a sort of senior politician. So I understand that actually the key thing is about trying to, as much as possible, speak with their voice. And I know that isn't always 100% easy thing in the world to do, but that I've always had that mentality. So because I've worked so long for particular members of Parliament, I kind of probably am more used to that than actually being my own voice. And in some ways, when I was doing the council, it was a little more unnatural for me in some ways, actually, having been that front and centre position. So I think very naturally, I feel like I can sort of fit into that, and I think I'll hopefully be quite good at sort of being able to imitate Donna as best I can do.
Brilliant, thank you very much. As Shirley alluded to, those are the end of our questions, Alex. I wondered whether you'd like to clarify any answers that you've given during the hearing, or ask questions of the panel about the next stage of the process.
No, I'm very happy with my answers. The only question to the panel is when will I find out the answer?
I don't know whether Katie wants to answer. We've done this a couple of times from my memory, which is fundamentally we'll obviously go into closed session, have our conversation, reach our deliberations and come to our conclusion. We will, of course, take a couple of days, I suspect, to put a confirmation letter together, but I know what we tend to do is give an informal decision relatively quickly. Because we've all applied for jobs, haven't we, and waited probably a little bit too long before we get the answer. So we'll try our best to give you some feedback really quite quickly. Fantastic. So the panel will now need to go into a closed session to reach the recommendation on the proposed appointment of Alex Rennie as Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. The decision of the panel will be released following that session, no later than 3 clear working days. So we'll go to item 6, which is the exclusion of press and public. I would like to move to recommend that the press and public be excluded from the meeting during the following item of business, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during that item, there would be a disclosure to them of exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1, schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, being information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, open brackets, including the authority holding the information, close brackets, and further that in all the circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Are members agreed? Thank you very much. What I suggest we do is we also take a 5-minute comfort break so that we can do what we need to do and then come back and have our conversations. Thank you, everybody.